Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We talked about Scott Adams killing Dilbert, his Dilbert cartoon strip, effectively over the weekend.
Yep.
We talked about that a good deal yesterday, but I want to talk to our next guest about it as well, get his perspective. So just to reset what happened this weekend, Scott Adams took to social media and posted this perspective.
So if nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people, according to this poll, not according to me, according to this poll, that's a hate group. That's a hate group. And I don't want to have anything to do with them. And I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the away.
And he went on from there. Subsequent to all the furor and the denunciations and the repudiation of his cartoon strips by his syndicator and the major papers that still carried it, he did a podcast interview with a podcaster named Hotep Jesus, in which he provided some context to what he had to say. There was purpose behind it, of course, but right. You're not going to get that sort of consideration from the knee-jerk identitarian mob set, and he didn't, but here's the context.
If you were a white man in America and you're watching the news and you're seeing this thing called CRT, critical race theory, you're seeing DEI and ESG, all three-letter things that have in common trying to reach some kind of equity, racial balancing kind of situation. Now, I'll ask you this question because maybe you can educate me. My understanding is that they all have at the base of their narrative that white people, mostly white men, have created a situation and continue to perpetuate one that's bad for black people. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So what would be the most natural way you would feel if the narrative from the media, from college, from high school, your teachers, your parents, if the media was very, let's say, cohesive, and it said white people are the problem, do you think that would affect how black people thought about white people?
Yes.
Would it have any effect?
Yes.
And assuming it's a negative effect, would it be reasonable for somebody to say, wait, there's this group of people, I don't have any problem with any individual, and I don't want to change the Constitution, right? Everybody's got to be treated equally. But it's a little bit smarter for me to stay away from a group who has been brainwashed to dislike me exactly. Like me exactly. I'm a rich white guy in America. I'm very much right in the center of those crosshairs. Now, does that mean that I think everybody should avoid their neighbor? No. Does that mean I'm never going to talk to a black person? No. Does that mean I won't hire black people? No. Doesn't mean any of that. And also, I assume people know hyperbole when they see it, right?
Well, do they? Do they? And I appreciate his perspective. For example, the Awfuls, the angry white leftist female, I want to stay away from them. Okay. So does that make me a misogynist? I don't think so. Reverend Dean Nelson is the VP of Government Relations at the Human Coalition and chairman of the board for the Douglas Leadership Institute. That's as in Frederick Douglass. He's also going to be at the Black Conservative Summit the end of this month that you just heard advertised. Reverend Dean Nelson, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Man, thank you so much for the opportunity.
So I'm sure you were aware of the Scott Adams controversy, and I don't know if you had heard, the different parts of it, including his subsequent interview with Hotep Jesus. But what was your overall takeaway on what you think he was attempting to do, and how successful or not he was in his attempt?
Yeah, there are always people that are trying to divide. There are people that are trying to kind of protect. I come from the school of thought from Martin Luther King Jr. and Frederick Douglass, looked to identify problems within culture, but together guide way to overcome those challenges, not denigrate one group against the other. Dr. King's famous thoughts with regard people being of their skin, but their character, and Frederick Douglass stating that we would work with anybody to do right and nobody to do wrong. We understand that there's been a history of racism and a challenge within America. However, I'm one of those who simply believes that America is a great nation and that we together can overcome and solve many of the problems that we face if we're willing to do it together.
So we shouldn't avoid any group that doesn't respect us. Right?
Well, there are groups of people, Frederick Douglass's thought was, look, leave us alone. Let us the opportunity to stand on our own. And I believe that, the eugenics movement in America, you guys probably saw or read just over the weekend where there was a Democratic leader in Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, we covered
basically
it.
Stated that there were, this with Down syndrome or other problems would have been aborted. And so that mindset, as was seen in Nazi Germany and other places, I don't think has a place in America, but that's the founding of Planned Parenthood within our culture. Its founder, Margaret Sanger, literally stated in a letter to Clarence Gamble in 1939 that we don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And she would work with ministers to try to, that idea. And so it's been around, but I think, again, that there are people within our culture that seek for a better culture.
So, I'm just to be clear on this, so your view on being a provocateur like Scott Adams was attempting to be there to highlight this racialization of our politics and our culture and how destructive that is, going in all sorts of different directions. He offered one initially and then explained another subsequently. Is that unproductive? It may be attention getting, but is it ultimately unproductive in your mind as compared to the unity message, the Frederick Douglass, I don't want benefits conferred or removed to people based on their race, because that just gets in, that just takes us down that spiral to where America was under slavery and Jim Crow. What is your view about approach?
Yeah, I think back to, I remember reading a report that 85% of Black Americans said that America was fighting for. That was a time period where we had more discrimination, arguably, within our country, but they were set that we unite and to work together for a better hope in the future. I think that of, inflammatory and that line of, I think, is unproductive, particularly within our culture. Yeah. And I'm more concerned about finding and identifying people that can work together to build on the history and the success of America with the ideal that we are a more perfect union.
Yeah, I agree. I understand what Scott Adams was trying to do, but I agree that, he just... you never get past the initial reaction, and then you just get sidelined because of the fury that it creates around it. So I agree with you that the approach was not the most productive way. But at the same time, you look at like Gallup polling, and the question Gallup, speaking of another survey, not the survey Adams was referencing, the Gallup polling organization asked, would you say relations between white and black people are very good, somewhat bad, or very bad? The very and somewhat good has gone from black adults, 70% saying very or somewhat good, 62% of white adults. That was in 2001. 2 decades later, it's only 43% of whites and 33% of blacks that say relations between the races are very or somewhat good. And I wonder if you think, I'll just leave it open-ended. What do you attribute to the deterioration in both whites and blacks saying the relationship between the races isn't very good?
Yeah, I think those kind of comments from Mr. Adams and the media that upholds it and propagates it, I think that's largely what we're dealing with. If you were to ask the average black American or white American to talk about their interaction during the course of the week with somebody of an opposite, I guarantee you that most of it would be favorable. We work together.
Totally.
We sometimes live in communities together. I feel like that we, day to day, it's fine. But when we watch the news, when we hear these things, it creates this image, and then we, isolated things that we show on television and create this. And I think that's in part of what I think certain elitists do. It's more division within our culture. I know in my own world every day, we work together, we walk together, we interact together, not always having the same ideas and the same beliefs, but I think that we do well together, and I believe it would be much better if we were to hide things rather than isolating the incidents and like these type of things that Mr. Adams was discussing.
What about instances like what's going on in our cultural institutions where it is the left and oftentimes blacks on the left that are pushing for neo-segregation? There was a black mom who had to sue, famously now, her local grammar school because they literally were putting all the black kids in one class and all the white kids in another class.
That's the very thing that Luther King Jr. again worked to do the opposite, right? We were trying to increase it was integration. This is, and that is that particularly in institutions, whether it's media, academia, we do have a philosophy that with black elites that do not represent the values and the attitudes of most ordinary black Americans. And I believe that those are that we need to offer a different a picture for our country. I'd recognize that is a reality, whether it's in government, whether it is in the media, but that is still not really of everyday Americans. And I think that we need to do a better job of highlighting the real stories of people who get along and work together.
Yeah, I mean that's what Bob Woodson and he does so brilliantly, and the 1776 Unites project is tell the success stories too that can be emulated and scaled. I wonder, we've got Election Day in Chicago today, as you no doubt know, and you think about the disintegration of our big cities. And I wonder if you are of the belief, and I'm not trying to outsource this, but if you're of the belief that it's going to be black conservative leaders, the next generation of Bob Woodsons and Shelby Steeles and Glenn Lowrys and you, that are going to have to lead the effort to engender a renaissance in big city America, and then by extension, sort of a renaissance for America more generally.
I certainly hope so. I'm trying to do everything that I can to inspire a next generation. I was speaking last week at Princeton, as well as another private college up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I find that they're for guidance from younger generations of black, and I would like immigrant Americans who understand that this country has not been perfect, but this country offers a pathway again to success and to freedom. I mean, I could use the example in Chicago where I could complain about the high abortion rate. I could complain about the eugenics movement and Planned Parenthood, but what I've done is the work that Human Coalition, we have a telecare program that we run that engages with women seeking abortions for 1,000 women last year, helping them to get the help and the resources that they need. 6% of women who are seeking abortion say that they would choose to if this were different. Well, how do we come alongside and engage in the epidemic of abortion within our culture, to walk alongside of what background, but ethnic having difficulty? We demonstrate a solution. And so that's part of what I want to be known is what are the pathways for success, engage people who need the assistance that can actually ultimately turn their lives around. I think that our story and our narrative will be in future generations by the success that we do for people who want to get a hand up rather than vote and make a difference in their lives. I believe that that's what the emerging generation would like to be involved with, and I believe that those leaders, as you've named, responsibility is to be able to pass the baton to that generation, giving them a sense of hope, but also giving them a sense you make a difference in generations.
He is Reverend Dean Nelson, the VP of Government Relations at the Human Coalition, chairman of the board for the Douglas Leadership Institute as well. He'll be at the Black Conservative Summit in Chicago, March 24th and 25th. For more information on that, freedomjournalinstitute.org is where you want to go. Get all the details, sign up to attend. Reverend Dean Nelson, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Willie Wilson for mayor of Chicago. The violence in Chicago must stop. Willie Wilson pledges real action to do that. A revised police structure, 4 superintendents, more accessible to their neighborhoods, providing faster communication and concentration of resources. Willie Wilson pledges more integrated police patrols to increase community, confidence, and cooperation. Willie Wilson's pledge will make Chicago safer. Finally, Chicago, do it right. Willie Wilson for mayor.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule.